I'm not good enough is the most popular limiting belief. And why does that happen? Why did people think that? Where does it come from? This is Dr. Spencer Coaches. Today I'm going to talk to you about the most popular limiting belief is I'm not good enough. I hear this a lot in many people when I ask them to do something that is a little bit beyond their skill set. And this belief is at the source of low self-worth. What I see, what I'm personally witnessing is the society is becoming more and more competitive. And with social media, the whole me mentality, people are constantly comparing themselves to other people, whether or not they measure up. I know from my own self and my own experience, growing up in grade school was very competitive. And we were competitive with each other. We would just flat out say it. You know, people would, I got better grades than you. What did you get? And put people down for getting poor grades or not performing well. And it became really apparent to me when I was early, probably in elementary school, that it was very important to compete, to get better grades than other kids, to outperform other kids. In fact, I believe it started when we were playing kickball, and I think it was third or fourth grade, and the gym teacher said, "Why aren't you picking Spencer?" And they said, "Well, he's not that good." I go, "It doesn't matter, just pick him because he's part of the class, you're making him feel left out." And they said, "Fine." But it was that moment I realized my performance matters in relationship to feeling like I belong, to feeling like I'm part of a community. And that drove me for many, many years to outperform people. I became extremely competitive. I knew that if I didn't do my best, people would not accept me. And I developed that belief. So this belief of I'm not good enough, I got flat out told I wasn't good enough, drove me to succeed. And it became a real driving force out of fear because I was afraid of not belonging, of not having any friends or, by the time I got to, I don't want to make this all about me, but I'm just sharing you my experience of this belief and how it influenced me. Now, for me, I stepped up to the plate. And for others I see, they don't step up to the plate. I see people, it appears as if something happened to them when they were a child or sometime in their past where they got hit with a challenge and they failed. They never measured up. And that can have devastating consequences on one's self-esteem and one's confidence and self-worth. Because once it becomes set, once you begin to believe that you're not good enough, it becomes a self-sabotaging belief. And then it'll destroy and eat away your confidence. It'll eat away your motivation. It'll eat away your even desire to even want to try. It will eat away your belief, your hope in a better, brighter, more successful future. If you truly believe you're not good enough, you've got to understand it only fits into a certain context. I mean, it could come from many sources. It could come from your parents always being hard on you. Your father or your mother just drilling into you to get better and constantly improve. I know my parents did that to me. Asian parents, if you're Asian out there, you got Asian parents, about the whole grade thing. Pretty much the world knows about the pressure that Asian parents put on their children when it comes to grades. But a lot of people suffer from this, especially narcissistic parents abusing their children, saying you're never going to measure up to me. You don't know how hard it is. You're not pretty enough. You're never going to be pretty enough. things like that. I believe men experience this in terms of work performance, which comes from grade school. Your ability to perform in school, to get good grades, or perform well in an athletic event. Say you joined a football team or baseball team and you're just not that good. Well, usually you get training, especially, if you've played sports out there. I think you can relate to this. If you join a sports team, you're not good, they just make you train. Everybody, training levels the playing field. Doesn't matter if you're better than, if you got talent, if you're not so good. Everybody gets trained and works just as hard as the next guy over. And when you train yourself, that you can overcome that belief of not being good enough, or maybe you trained and still you never measured up, which would be devastating. Most people quit the sport. Most people just, when they're not good at something, they don't do it. It doesn't feel good to do something and fail at it, or just not be good at it at all and you see everybody else doing a better job, being a better football player, getting better grades. Whatever the context of which it's in, when you see other people outperform you, you see social, very outgoing people, extroverted people become socialites, and you go out and try to talk to people, and you're very awkward at it. You don't connect with people. And you see that person making friends with everybody. You begin to compare yourself to other people. That's another source of this belief, of comparing yourself to someone who is better. I mean, they are more skilled. And the expectations that are placed upon us from grade school by teachers and by the pressures of society, from our parents, from TV, from movies, from internet. Look how good-looking people are. Look how wealthy people are. It's all made up. But for some reason, younger people, I think more than older people, compare themselves to these internet superstars, these social media superstars. Or if you're a business person or you're an employee, you may be working for a company and see Joe Schmo over there just excelling and moving up in the company. You're always going to compare yourself to someone who outperforms you, and you think that that is absolute. There is that only one person, because there's always somebody out there better than me at what I do. And there's always somebody out there worse off than me at what I do. If you know that, then you know that it is relative. That your comparison to that superstar is really unrealistic. Now, wherever you got bombarded with the idea that you're not good enough, it's a limiting belief. Because if you truly believe that about yourself, your confidence is going to erode. You're going to sabotage everything you do. You're going to give up trying before you even start. And that is the most damning thing that can happen. Because you won't excel, you won't even try. You can't excel at anything if you don't try. And that's the real problem with this belief. You can also develop a sense of, what do they call it, imposter syndrome. You get to a certain level, say in a career, say you get to team leader, supervisor, and then there's a project manager position available. And if you believe you're not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I don't have the people skills, I don't have the know-how, and then you're going to not even want to bother training yourself to learn the skills. You see what I mean? You give up before you even try. Or you feel like a fraud, meaning you go home every day going, what the hell am I doing? You go to work and you start to feel like everybody can see through you. They know that I'm faking it. They know that I'm terrible. And you have this negative self-talk about how bad things are, about how bad you're performing. It's always about performance. It's not about your character or who you are as a person. But for some reason, this belief sinks in so deep that we believe we're not a good person. We're not good enough as a basic human being. And this is where it becomes really dangerous, where it really destroys and erodes your self-worth and your confidence and your self-esteem, your outlook on life. It can lead to anxiety, performance anxiety. It could lead to depression. Because if you're constantly comparing yourself and you're seeing everyone else succeed except yourself, it's a really bad situation to be in. It's really demoralizing. You know, I'll describe a friend of mine. I'll leave his name out. A 40-year-old virgin. He only wants a 10-plus model. Unrealistic. He's overweight. Never asked a girl out in his life because of this negative self-talk. He doesn't believe he's good enough. Then he has an idea about himself, and then he places that same high value, high expectation that he places on himself on girls in his life and says they're not good enough. When in actuality, he's hiding his own insecurity by not even trying to connect or ask a girl out. In other words, you quit so you never experience being rejected. And this is the self-sabotaging behavior is what I use that example of. You sabotage yourself. You may even foul up on a job just to not experience the imposter syndrome and the stress of trying to fulfill other people's expectations of you and your performance, whether it's a job, whether it's a position, and then you sabotage your own work. This is what can happen with this belief. It leads to a deep sense of self-pity. I got another friend who just strikes out with every girl now. He was in a 15-year long-term relationship. That didn't work out because he didn't want to ask the question because he kept thinking he doesn't make enough money to support them, even though he was making enough money to support them. Because some deep down inside, he believed it wasn't enough. He's not good enough. The money he made isn't good enough. She wound up cheating on him in the end. And she claims it was after they broke up. In his mind, they didn't break up yet. So you see the mess he got himself into. This is, these are worst case scenarios here. But now he mopes around. He mopes around feeling sorry for himself. Rather than investing in skill set training, rather than investing, say, in communication skills, self-assertive training, dating, going to a dating coach and learning to play the dating game again, he just finds out what the girl wants and then tries to fulfill it, much like a people pleaser. And that's all that he does. He has no sense of self, no self-confidence. He's not a leader. And this is what happens when you believe you're not good enough, is you ultimately give up leading yourself and leading your own life. Because you can't lead others if you can't lead yourself. You can't lead others in action if you yourself are not disciplined. If you yourself are not committed because you don't believe in what you do because you're not good enough. You quit before you even try. You give up so many opportunities. Now the other side is you become an overachiever. I mean, that's what happened to me. And it's what happens to a lot of highly successful people, like Bill Gates level, Steve Jobs level, success. There's something that I watched in another podcast. This guy was saying there are 3 qualities in every highly successful person. Is one, there's a deep sense of low self-worth, a deep insecurity that they're not good enough, which then drives them to work really hard because deep down underneath it, they believe they deserve the prestige, the money, the success. So because they believe they deserve it, to get out of that feeling of not being good enough or that belief of not being good enough, they aim for such a high level of success, and they're completely driven, they're completely committed, they're completely focused. That's another third quality, is the hyper-focused, that they work to accomplish a great task like Steve Jobs created Apple. There's a lot of high successful people that are like that, but they're not happy, they're miserable. I've met one who was a owner of a large corporation, over 10,000 employees. Maybe some of you consider that to be small business. He was the CEO, and he's very upset, very just not happy anymore. And he thought he had to live up to other people's expectations of what he thought a CEO is, what he thought a leader is, what he thought people would look up to him as. And he tried to fulfill that character. And the pressure got to him so much that he started being miserable. And then he woke up and realized, I can be myself. I'm already accomplished. I have nothing to prove to anybody. I'm already accomplished. I can just relax and crack jokes and open up and be myself, take the tie off, unbutton the top button. And he said when he went to work, he was afraid that people would lose confidence in him. But what he got was the exact opposite. People liked him more. They enjoyed being around him more. They weren't intimidated by him anymore. And as a result, he transformed his whole work environment of his company. The desire to be perfect, the overachiever, you can experience burnout with that. Just grinding yourself, trying to live to some high expectation to avoid not being good enough so you can be good enough. So you can be admired and respected by your peers, family, whoever. I got to say, it is nice when you're in a high status position. People are just nicer to you. They go out of their way for you. They talk to you differently. They're more courteous. They're more giving. They're more generous around you. When you're moping around, feeling sorry for yourself, having anxiety and not being confident, people walk all over you. People take advantage of you. And that's not a good feeling. So either way, you see the two sides is what I'm getting at here. The limiting belief of I'm not good enough will either lead to a sense of self-sabotage and future failure, in a cycle of failure in every aspect. It leads to a deep sense of self-pity and eventually anxiety and depression. The other side is high performance. You become a high performer to avoid not being good enough because you know the consequence of that, and maybe you believe you deserve to be successful, so you work at it. You're willing to put in the time and the effort, but you drive yourself insane and you push everybody away because you're so driven. And you find yourself alone at the top. As they say, it's lonely at the top. Those who drove everybody out of their life because of their work ethic, their sheer discipline and willpower, and the intensity of that personality push people away. Nobody wants to be around that person because you always make other people feel like they don't measure up. And when you make other people feel like they don't measure up, why aren't you working as hard as me? How come you're not living up to your high potential? I've gone through that. This is what I have done with a lot of people in my life in my past. I've since learned to just accept people and meet people where they are, that no one's a bad person or less of a person if they have a different work ethic, a different drive. We all have our different ambitions. We all have different motivations and reasons for doing things. And in the end, if we can all laugh and play and get each other's backs and work together, that's what matters. We live in a culture that's so competitive. It's hard not to fall into the category of just driving yourself to succeed at the expense of your sanity, at the expense of your well-being, at the expense of your mental health. Both sides, either depression or becoming so arrogant and prideful and aggressive that you become standoffish. The I'm not good enough arose from an experience you had. Whether it was an experience of your parents belittling you, your teacher having a talk, listen, you've got these awful grades. If you don't pull your grade points up, you're going to get left back, and you don't want that to happen. Just fear. I mean, fear is the strongest motivating factor ever. The fear of loss, the fear of failure, the fear of poverty, the fear of being alone your whole life often drives one to do things, to avoid those bad consequences. Now, yes, you can use fear to get you out of a hole and get you started. But in the long run, you won't feel fulfilled because you're going to feel not good enough. Even at the top, you're going to compare yourself to others and constantly judge yourself. In other words, you become your own worst critic. It could have come from a sports team where you just didn't make the trials. You just didn't make the trials. So it could be from being made fun of so bad, you felt so demoralized that your self-worth just left. You stopped believing in yourself. When you stop believing in yourself, that's when you hit a downward spiral. That's when the self-pity and the learned helplessness kicks in. So I'm making this video to help anyone who's watching avoid that downward spiral or get yourself out of it. And the way out of learned helplessness and self-pity is by taking action. Any action. Cleaning your room is the best thing to do. Clean your house then. Clean your car. Clean your office space. Go and get a haircut. Take a shower. Shave. Buy yourself a nice outfit. Simple things to get out of self-pity and learned helplessness. Because when you're able to change your own mood, your own self-image, how you feel about yourself, and get a little bit of confidence in you, your step, your pep will be different and people will notice. Often the I'm not good enough belief has its roots in that negative, bad, hurtful experience. It's some part of you feels hurt and demoralized. To actually believe and buy into you're not good enough and not have any faith in your ability to learn and grow as you go. Or to buy into the belief that you're not good enough, you don't recognize or acknowledge the accomplishments and the talents that you currently have and accomplishments you've already done. You may think it's wrong to be confident because you'll become arrogant or something. People will think you're cocky. There's a real fear because it takes responsibility. There is a fear of responsibility when you realize that you are responsible for the outcome by the actions you take, the beliefs, the attitude, the outlook you have on life, your mindset, if you will. When you realize that it is all on your shoulders, the weight of that responsibility can be daunting because there's no one left to blame. We see when you have a hurtful experience, you take yourself off the table because you can point fingers. You can say it was their fault. My father always talked to me this way, or my mother always treated me this way, or girls never liked me, or those kids in school always made fun of me, or I just never got good grades and it was their fault. I'm just not good at school. I'm just not good at whatever. It's because of the situation and the circumstance. You start blaming the circumstance, something beyond your control, so you can take the viewpoint of, I can't do anything about it. Why bother trying then? You give up before you even start. You see how this is just a downward spiral and a self-sabotaging belief that ruins your life and ruins people's lives. This is why I'm making this video. You become so uncertain, so insecure about yourself that you create a false persona that you project, that it becomes so shallow, so skin deep that it can shatter with just a mere statement of truth. You follow what I'm saying? So many people can't handle the truth. There's a lot of jealous and envious people out there who compare themselves to others, and instead of being happy for their success, they're envious. And if you have experienced a degree of success and you have envious people around you, you know what I mean. They just work to bring you down. They criticize you for your success principles. They criticize you for working hard, for working late. Instead of going out, you're reading Think and Grow Rich. You're getting coached. You're investing your time and energy into improving your skill set and improving your character. There's two sides to improve is your skill set, because often you may not be good enough in your skill set. That doesn't mean you're not a good enough person. And this is here you have to create this distinction. Because for most people who believe and they're not good enough and suffer from self-pity, from prolonged self-pity, cannot separate themselves from what they do. And because they're not good at what they do, they think they're not good enough as a man or a woman. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not manly enough. And they stop having confidence. They stop trusting themselves and believing in themselves. And then that just turns into a lonely life. So you see how this one belief can sabotage so many aspects of your life. Building your self-worth is what is key here. Getting rid of that negative self-talk by becoming aware of that negative self-talk and actually writing it down. And how you challenge that belief, challenge the belief of I'm not good enough or I'm just going to mess up or whatever the thought process is. Ask yourself, how real, how true is this belief? Look for 4, call it statements of evidence, 4 supporting facts that make that belief true, and understand what context that belief exists in. I was a terrible baseball player in Little League in elementary school. I was afraid of the ball. I couldn't hit that ball for my life. I couldn't catch it until one day I realized it's just a ball. All I got to do is just put my hand there and put it in my mitt. What am I afraid of? And then suddenly something clicked in me. For the longest time. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not good enough in other aspects I got put into when I was in elementary. I bring up elementary school because those are the developmental years. So much of who we are and our worldview, and especially our sense of self-worth and self-confidence, our sense of self is developed between the ages of 0 and 7. So when I speak about elementary school, I do that intentionally to evoke memories in you, to look back to those days, because that's often where the moment, the experience, the situation happened that made you believe you're not good enough. But there's also other things that in life made you feel like you are good enough. You succeeded in other aspects, and to look back in your life and actually count the moments that you succeeded. Count the moments that you overcame challenges and understand deeply what was learned when you overcame those challenges. So that's how you can cultivate your self-worth and your self-confidence. Now, the third step is to develop your confidence by developing competency, developing your skill set, improving at a skill set. Let's just say you're a team leader, but you're not doing a good job, and now your job is in question. So you got to learn people skills. You got to learn communication. You got to learn management skills. You got to learn workflow skills. Take a course in managing. Take a course in self-assertive training. Take a course in communication. Take a course in sales. Learn how to influence people and read people. Learn how to negotiate and get a yes out of people. In other words, you can learn skills and improve upon them and improve your circumstance. Now, the other side is your core values. And I think this is the most important one. Number 4 is get to know your core values. What really matters to you? What's important to you? What gives you a sense of fulfillment and gives you a sense of joy? What lights up your smile? You know, what lights up your attitude? What gets you excited? What really gives you a sense of satisfaction in a way that doesn't really involve other people? It's not dependent upon other people. It's not dependent upon their approval or not. It's solely dependent upon whether or not it gives you joy. You might find a hobby like cooking or hiking, model building, playing pool, whatever it is, reading, knitting, drawing, photography, whatever the hobby is, you do it because it satisfies you. You know, when you do something that makes you happy, it almost doesn't matter how much time and energy you put into it. It doesn't feel like work. It feels like something you enjoy doing. It feels fulfilling. It's satisfying and rewarding just to do it. And when you're able to cultivate that feeling over and over and over, you'll feel better about yourself. And usually when you like doing something, you get good at it because you enjoy doing it, so you do it often. And when you do it often, it's like practicing the piano over and over and over again. You just get better and better and better because you get familiar with it. You get familiar with the keyboard. You get familiar with the rules of the playground. You get the rules of engagement, if you will. You get better at knowing the dynamics of the situation. You get better in your skills for the sake of improving. And often the application, becoming competent, getting good at something, is motivating in and of itself. And then when you get to a certain point, you realize, I can do this with my eyes closed. That's when you become confident. So you develop confidence by developing competency through the growth mindset. That's how you overcome this limiting belief. First, you need to challenge the belief. There's got to be some other... Look at it like the table, like the 4 legs of a table. In order for that table to stand, you've got to have 4 legs. There are 4 legs, 4 statements of truth, or 4 statements, call it evidence, that proves that you're not good enough. And most of the time, you're going to find out that there simply isn't 4 legs. There's 1 or 2. And then ask yourself, what context was it in? Maybe you're not a good enough baseball player, but maybe you're a great softball. Maybe you're a great soccer player. Maybe you're a great runner. Maybe you're a great saxophone player. Maybe you're great at math. Whatever it is, you're good at something other than that thing that you heard that you're not good enough, that you failed in. Find something else that you're good at. And then you'll be able to discover what it's like to believe in yourself. Discover where that belief came from. There's an experience in the 4 statements of evidence. Number 2, look at the context of which it was in, because, it's just a context. Number 3, you got to improve your skills, because it's not a matter of you as a person not being good enough. It's a matter you're just not skilled enough. And there's a difference. So to create the distinction between your own sense of self-worth and happiness and being, between a job or a task that you're not good at. And then number 4 is developing your confidence. That's how you get out of that state of feeling like you're not good enough and believing that you're not good enough. And that's how you overcome it. Now, if you have this problem, it leads to such detrimental problems because you quit before you even start. You give up before you even try. Or it leads to this, and then it leads to self-pity and depression. Or the opposite way, you become a high performer and a perfectionist, and you drive yourself mad. You push everybody away because you become so driven, and you place unrealistic expectations on other people that you become a real a-hole. And that's not good. Those are the consequences of this limiting belief. And if you have this, I help with this because it's a mindset issue. Everything is in the mind. When you can get your mind in order, as they say, get your house in order, what that means is getting your mind in order, you can accomplish anything. It's a matter of getting your mind in order, and I can help you do that. Go ahead and leave a comment below. Go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. And I will get back to you. My contact information is below the video. Thank you so much for listening. This is Dr. Spencer Coaches. I sure hope that helps.